Today, we are talking about target market and buyer persona. And I would like you to walk away with a clear structure that you can follow to have complete clarity on your target market and the buyer personas you sell to. The reality is a lot of founders miss the mark here, but they think they don't. And I don't want you to be one of those people. All right, well, let's dive in here. And I'm going to start by making a really specific promise to you. The reality, and I see this, I've worked with over 70 B2B SaaS and service founders, but I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of SaaS and service founders. Most of them feel like they have their target market completely figured out. They completely understand their buyer personas. But the reality is they do not. And today I'm going to show you how to get complete clarity on your target verticals and buyer personas. And I'm also going to make sure that everyone in your company, once you do what I tell you, is going to be completely aligned to serve the same customer. That's key here. We need to speak the language of the buyers. If you have followed my content for any period of time, you know that I want sales reps that are so proficient at speaking the language of their buyers that they could go to a local meetup group with 15 people and have conversations and no one would know they're a sales rep. They would just assume they were in the industry with them because they speak the language so well. That's critical. Real quick, let me run you through my background for you new folks here. Three fast bullet points. I've worked with over 70 software and service companies over the course of my career, helping them build a repeatable sales process. If you know my work, you know that I take a very data-driven approach when it comes to building sales teams. It's one of the things I'm most passionate about. The data will tell you everything you need to know on how to improve your sales performance. I've written 3 Amazon best-selling books. One is on cold outreach called Cold to Committed. The other is on how to run sales development teams. That's called the Sales Development Framework. And then the third one is called 16 Steps to Repeatable Sales. Step-by-step guide on how to build a repeatable sales process. And then finally, I've helped our clients sell over 100 million in software and services. Of the venture-backed companies I've worked with, they've raised over 280 million while working with me. And I've trained over 1,000 salespeople. So I've been around the block, both as a frontline sales rep and SDR cold calling, sales rep trying to hit their quota, but I've also been more behind the scenes. I've been in board meetings while the sales team is not performing well, and I've been in sales meetings while they are performing well. Spoiler alert, it's much nicer to be in the boardroom when sales is going great, but I've seen it all. And I've also taken a lot of lumps. I've had times where I thought something was going to work and have a huge impact on the sales team, and it totally flops and things get worse. I've had situations where we had lead lists putter out and everything was going great, and then all of a sudden we plateau. So I have a lot of context there. And I can tell you from my experience, the understanding of your target market and the people within those markets that you service, the actual buyers, that is a critical component to being able to speak the language and build the trust you need to get the information you need to properly position your product or service as a true solution to a problem that they have. But too many people want to just focus on what words do I say to close a deal, as opposed to what words do I say to show the prospect that not only am I the right solution, but we are the right people to be delivering this solution to you. And in a world as competitive as it is today, this is critical. And that's what we're going to be talking about first and foremost. Now, market mapping. This is where we're going to start. There's going to be 2 things I'm going to walk through. First, I'm going to walk you through our market mapping template. We'll give everybody this. I'll tell you how to use it, how to fill it out. And then I'm going to walk you through an example of one that we did with a client. And that one's in a more of a slide deck format. So I'm going to show you both just so you have really good context there. All right. So we're going to start with verticals. If this is new to you and you're just starting to build out your go-to-market function, I recommend starting with one vertical and then building out from there. Focus on one vertical, go to market in one vertical, and then expand. But if you already have multiple verticals, you need to do it for all of them. And if you're new, I'm okay with you listing out all verticals, but then picking one to go to market. Now, let's go through what I would like you to do for each vertical. So vertical A, B, C, you're going to replace this with the actual name of the vertical. We have employee count, we have revenue, and we have their unique challenge. Employee count, how large are these companies? How much revenue are they doing roughly? You want to have a good sense of the size that you're going to service. Are you going after small local chiropractic clinics that have 3 employees? Or are you going towards like national franchises of chiropractic, like the Joint or whatever, and you're going to be targeting them on a much larger level. They might have hundreds of employees, right? And what's their unique challenge? And this is, you could put as many that exist, but I want you to try to condense that down into the three, at most, the three biggest challenges that are unique to this vertical. Okay, that's critical. You already list your challenges that you solve in general, but I want vertical specific challenges. What does this vertical struggle with that we can solve? And it might be similar across different verticals, but it needs a vertical lens. Why does it matter? The next thing here is, why is your solution a good fit for this vertical specifically? That context is key, because we need to speak the language of the buyer. That's at the core. If there's one thing you walk away with, you should walk away with that your salespeople should be able to speak the language of your buyers. It's so important, and making sure that you are articulating in this document why your solution is a good fit for that vertical, not just for somebody with this generic problem, is very important there. Why should this company, why should a company in this vertical invest in your solution now? Why now? What has to be true for this to be a good decision today? We want to make sure we write those out. Guess what? You might encounter some of your buyers that isn't true for. Maybe it isn't a good time for them now, but we need to know what good time is, and that's why we outline it here. How does specific feature help solve a vertical specific challenge? And it's the same question 3 times. Go as long as you can. Okay, so add more to this if you have more. But I want you to go feature by feature, and I want you to assess, how is this specific feature helping us solve a vertical specific challenge? If it doesn't, skip it and find something that does. Because when you're doing demos or you're doing sales calls, you want to speak to the vertical challenges, right? You want to speak to their challenges in the context of the vertical. It's really important. Okay, so that's on the vertical side. You're going to do that for 3 different verticals. And when you go through it, if it took you an hour, you went way too quick, way too quick. It's so many founders, and I stress this. No one believes this, by the way, but I stress this because it's the most true thing that I have. So many founders think they have this very well mapped out. Oh, we totally understand our target verticals, and then we go and we work with them, and they come out of this exercise. First of all, they go into the exercise not wanting to do it. Then they come out of the exercise saying, "I've never been more clear. Oh my gosh, I thought I was clear, but I wasn't." Because you need to dive deeper. And just because you as the founder know the vertical so well doesn't mean everyone else does. So don't let the ego of, oh, I know this space, stop you from really getting clarity here. Okay. So if it took you an hour, it didn't take you long enough, or no one pushed back, which is worse, right? You want to do this with your executive team. All right. Next, we're going to talk about persona. So these are the people within those companies. You're going to do one of these for each vertical. If you have more than 3 personas, which I'm sure some of you do, you're going to build out more. If you have less, you're only going to do however many that you have. But go through the different personas that you sell to. These are people who are involved in the sales process. They might be decision makers, stakeholders, potential champions. Some people have users there. I don't think that's necessary, by the way. That's a little too far down the totem pole, but you put the ones that are relevant to making a buying decision. Okay, what is their unique challenge for them, right? As that persona within that vertical, what's their unique challenge? How are they trying to solve it today? This is a very important question, because the reality is, if they're trying to solve it today in a way that's actually solving it, they're not going to care about your product or service. It's not going to resonate with them. And it cracks me up, because I'll ask founders sometimes, like, well, how are people doing it today? And they're like, oh, spreadsheets. Like, spreadsheets are the worst way to do something. It's like, not quite. Not quite. If a spreadsheet is doing the job, why would you replace the spreadsheet? If it's not causing any problems, why change? In fact, if the way people are doing it today is a spreadsheet, that might be the biggest competitor of all time. I almost rather them using a different solution that sucks than a spreadsheet that's doing it, right? So that's how I want you guys to think about this. How are they trying to solve it today? How can our solution help? How is it different from the alternative? What they're doing today, and also your competitors. Okay. And these should be big paragraphs. I know it's in a spreadsheet. These should be big, big paragraphs. Okay. Next, you're going to go, what are their goals, individual goals? Like, how do they look good to their boss? What has to be true? What KPIs are they held accountable to? What are their career goals? What do they want to achieve? Right? We need to understand their drivers, especially if you work multi-stakeholder deals, which a lot of folks do. There's more stakeholders involved in deals today than there ever has been before. You want to make sure you have a real good understanding of their goals. Then we have, how can we help them hit their goals or overcome their challenges? What is the best way to explain the value of your solution to the buyer? This is what we do. How do you explain it to that specific buyer? Right? It's one thing to have just a nice sentence that you say or a little elevator pitch, but how are we going deep specific to that user? Right? So, for example, a director of supply chain is going to have a very different lens than the chief supply chain officer or even a manager of logistics within the same company. They might be all part of the same thread here, but they all look at the thing with a little bit of a different lens. They have a different experience of the problem. The problem might be we don't have good visibility on when our freight makes it to their final destination, or our freight is generally late, and then we're paying OTIF charges, for my logistics geeks here. That might be the big challenge. But the chief supply chain officer might experience that challenge like, hey, this is our number one challenge. But then you go to the director of logistics, and that person's like, hey, our system is failing in this area because we have containers on the rail, we totally lose visibility on it. Same problem, different perspective, right? E equals MC squared. Okay. And then the next thing here is a real quote from the buyer explaining the challenge. Okay. A real quote from the buyer explaining that challenge. Okay. So you do that for each one of the personas. Let's go into an example here. What our company's vertical, I redacted this. This is from a client that we worked with a couple of years ago. Here were their main verticals. They had 4: private equity, venture capital, banks, and government. And then there's some focus area information here. But let's go into the deep dive for each specific vertical. So for venture capital, we have VCs, quick stats. You can see AUM, 10 million and up. Number of portfolio companies, 5 to 10. So we shifted, right? Remember, it was revenue and number of employees. You shifted a little bit to fit your business. Roles, number of employees still there, geography, and then examples. And then here we're talking about the challenges and solutions. They're unique challenges, and I'm not going to read through all of these, but I'll read through a couple parts of it. They see the need to add more value to their portfolio companies, being more hands-on versus just giving money. With their value creation team, they need tools to show that they are adding value through saving money and or time while building community. Why is this a solution a must for them right now? VC's current tool set is not serving them. Google Sheets, Airtable, etc. can become out of date if not managed closely and take time to manage. So that's them calling out that the Google Sheet or the spreadsheet is not a good solution. We can demonstrate how much value they're adding, time saved, and ongoing conversations between managers. And we accelerate the ramp time of portfolio companies. And then 2 to 3 specific features that help you solve the problem. So we did this, or we went to differentiators and value propositions. If you haven't seen our any of our content around value drivers, very, very impactful. So if you'd like us to do that topic again in the next couple of weeks, or maybe in 3 weeks, comment that and we'll make sure that we put it on our list to cover. It's basically getting crystal clear about what value your customers are experiencing and then how you guys differentiate. So list out the differentiators, and then the value proposition is right there. The exact same thing for the other verticals. Private equity, list of all of the information, their unique challenges, have a vested interest in their portfolio companies, and therefore a stronger incentive to generate savings for their portfolio companies. Why our solution is a must-have right now. Buying power that allows them to generate savings, a conversation feature that allows them to share best practices, etc. Needs us to enable a 10x return within 7 years. And then we go through differentiators. Same thing with banks. I'm going to start skipping through these now because you're getting the idea. Government, getting the idea. Now, when just a little on verticals, and I'll give you the example of personas. When you have all these verticals mapped out, generally it becomes pretty simple of which one you need to double down on. And you might be at a position now where you have a handful of customers in all different verticals. And I'm not telling you to ignore all verticals except one. But when you're starting to focus your go-to-market efforts, so maybe you're hiring on SDRs to do cold calling for you. Maybe you're bringing on sales reps. Maybe your sales team right now is kind of handling any deal that comes through and you want to get them very focused on doing outreach in one vertical. We can still take customers that come through these different verticals who come to us. But as far as where we're really focusing our go-to-market efforts, you want to focus it on the vertical. So right here for the VC, we have head of platform, key insights. They created a little muse here, female, mid-30s, responsible for connecting vendors to their portfolio, helps them save money and make more sales via introducing portfolio to potential buyers. Key problems, they listed out the key problems. Current vendor list is a static file and her points of context are in flux, has no understanding of how much value she adds to the portfolio, but she wants to know that she makes a difference apart from making intros, right? And you can see the rest of the problems there. How are they working to solve that problem? Static files, email intros, vetting vendors themselves, and then surveys on popular tech stacks and portfolio education. Our value prop / relationship, we operationalize the deals and discount problems with vendor vetting on her behalf, inclusive of feedback loop via reviews. Key solution, deals and discounts, tech stack, tactics, mentioning names, portfolio companies, and talking about pain points helps. We solve her problems and those of the portfolio companies. You get the idea here. You want to do that now for government, for each of your different personas. We're building these out, okay? And like I said, feel free to change a couple of these if there's a specific area. This isn't a good example because these are all basically the same. Or like key solution, you can add that there. Or if there's a tactical part of what you want to add, you can add it there. So make sure you have all of these really well mapped out. And then you can start creating your messaging. You could start focusing your team's efforts. That gives you a lot of flexibility on what you do. Now let's transition to Q&A. I'm back. Are you happy? Now you can see me again. Must be much better than looking at a deck. Maybe. Let's jump in here. So Josh had a good question here, which is, what if we don't know which vertical or company size is the best fit? How do we determine product market fit first? Well, the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to look at all of your customers. Okay, so when you look at all of your customers and you say, where do they all generally land? And if there's one that's more dominant, you're going to go that direction because the money has shown you that is a better fit. The next thing you do is you look and you say, well, is that the right market? So like we worked with a company where they had 3 different target verticals that they were working. They were heavily invested in vertical 1. But vertical 2 was just as easy to close. The sales cycles were the exact same length, but the cost of the solution was 4 times more. Way better to go that route, right? So you look at that. And then finally, if you don't have any of that data, so you don't have enough customers to be confident about that, you pick the one that you feel you know the best. So if like your mom was a dentist and you're targeting dentists, pick dentists. If you have a background in a certain industry, pick that industry. That generally works very well. About challenges and solutions section. How do you typically find this information? This is very difficult to find. This is not something that is just available on LinkedIn or their website. Usually, for example, I want to sell them some software for a project management tool or communication platforms, but it's not easy to find which tools they are using and why would they be open to switching to a different tool. Any tips and tricks? I do. I have a tip and a trick. How you find the information. 1, your customers. So the customers you're currently working with, you want to interview them and you want to ask them, what motivated you actually buy from us? Why are you buying, basically? Why did you buy? And then you want to ask, what value are you getting from the solution? Then you want to ask, what value are you getting that you didn't expect would be valuable? What problem did you have before that you don't have anymore? These are the types of questions that you want to ask to your existing customers. The next thing you can do is you can actually do outreach and survey your market. which I highly recommend, especially if you're going to do cold outreach. At a certain point, you should survey your market. So what that looks like is you have a rep cold call a bunch of people in the target market. Let's say you're targeting financial tech companies, fintech companies. You're going to call a whole bunch of them, a bunch of people in different departments, but fit within your personas. And you're not going to be doing a sales call. You're going to be doing a survey call. Hey, we're calling to see how fintechs are rebounding after COVID or whatever it is. And you're going to call them and you're going to ask them 5 questions. All questions you want to know. Are you struggling with this thing? How are you guys handling X? Right? You need to write these questions. And then there's going to be some of these questions like that are very specific to you. Like, have you ever considered switching service providers for X? Right? That would be how I do it. Okay. Next question here from Aiden. What if our product fits into multiple markets? Example, different industries with the same need. Any recommendations on narrowing focus? For reference, we do know the primary industries our customers operate in and are looking to have our new reps focus on new industries. Almost all products are going to fit into multiple markets. The important thing is, do we have the context of that vertical that makes that problem resonate more with the buyer? So it's one thing to say, we're going to help your project management. Oh, it's going to be amazing. Your project management, these project management tools are going to help you, make sure your projects are on time, nothing slipping through the cracks, no tasks are getting forgotten, etc. So of course, that's a clear value prop. But what tasks specifically? So for example, we worked with a project management tool for architects. This was maybe like 3 years ago now, 3.5 years ago now. They're a project management tool for architects. They didn't just talk about how they're going to help them manage their projects. No, now they're saying your jobs, you're not properly resourcing your jobs because you're applying more expensive talent on certain parts of a project where you don't need to. And you need a project management solution to be able to see all of that, right? But we're for architects. And we know that this is a specific issue for architects. We want to make sure we have the right person on that job. So that's how I'd go about. Aiden, you're up here. Let me pull you on. Was that helpful, Aiden?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the one piece that may be slightly unique with what we do is that there are, almost countless use cases depending on the industry, right? So in industry A, you have use case 1, 2, and 3, and in industry B, you have use case 4, 5, and 6. And the tools that we provide are actually, sometimes they're consistent between those use cases, but often they're different. And, that's kind of the danger of having a more custom tool. But that's right. Kind of looking to expand outside of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So in that case, I would make it more use case dependent. And it's okay to have some of those things overlap because, in the different verticals, they're going to have some overlapping needs, especially if verticals are very similar. So for example, architecture and construction is fairly similar, right? And architects maybe manage different vendors a lot more than a construction company do, but they're fairly similar and they suffer from a lot of the same problems. They structure their companies pretty similar. Same with like software development firms, right? Totally different, but they're managing talent and they're trying to get something built, which is software versus hardware. And in that case, it's okay to go use case specific, but how that use case applies to that vertical is very helpful to have. So for example, when I worked in supply chain for a little bit, I ran the inside sales team at a global supply chain software company. And one of our prospects was Disney. Another one was Procter and Gamble. They suffer from the same supply chain issues. Late to ports, needs to reroute containers, a truck falls on, fails on the side of the road, and now it's going to push things back a day. And a lot of people don't know this, but most major retailers have what's called OTIF charges, on time in full, where if the product doesn't get there on time, there's a fee. So they want to avoid that as much as possible. So their challenge is, hey, things happen, which screws up our delivery planning. So we can't give an accurate time that we're going to be able to get the freight there, which means we're going to pay a lot more in fees. That's the same. But Disney does very different shipping than Procter and Gamble. If Procter and Gamble's selling little small things, Disney might be shipping toys that are consumable, right? So they're delivering to very different types of locations. Some overlap, like they're both probably shipping to Walmart, right? But maybe a lot more logistics around the theme parks for Disney than it is for Procter & Gamble. So that's just an example. Even though we have the same challenges, we're going to be speaking to it in the context of their world, right? We're going to be saying like, okay, well, what happens when a container of, I don't know, 1,000 shampoo bottles is delayed at a port? Are you able to pull shampoo bottles from somewhere else? I might be able to say the same thing about Disney, except we're talking about stuffed animals, but I'm going to use the appropriate language. So I'm speaking more about the language than I am speaking about like the fundamental problem. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm actually, I'm not quite sure what company you're talking about, but I believe we're one of your old competitors. So.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool. Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah.
You know all about OTIF and that nonsense.
Yep. Yeah, but definitely makes sense about kind of language versus function. That's really helpful.
Cool. Well, yeah, thanks for hopping on. That was great. And that's why I love pulling people up. That's why I've been wanting to do this for a while, is because your question is good, but it's like this kind of back and forth that I think is really helpful for everybody. And if you liked it and you're watching this, comment if you thought that was helpful, and we'll keep that as part of the process. Thank you so much, and we'll talk soon. Bye, everybody.